This is the Air Minute from Augmented World Expo 2022. Today I'm talking with Andrew Somerville, who is an XR creative director, and Jane Gauntlett, who is an XR storyteller. I'm curious if you have dreams for what the metaverse should become in the next 2 or 3 years, and are there any challenges or developments that are needed for us to get there?
You know, a chair is technology. We just don't think of it like that anymore because it's part of our everyday experience. The metaverse is already here, and us imagining what it's going to be like in the future is interesting, but waiting for a form of technology or waiting for something to come along that's going to fix everything, I think is a mistake. Instead, we should be working with what we have now.
Did I just hear you posit that the metaverse maybe isn't the technology that we're using, but the kinds of stories and experiences that we can create because we're thinking about it in a new way?
So I specialize in kind of talking and sometimes lecturing about the nature of immersion and interactivity and agency. Mm-hmm. Some of my work has been for like marketing companies recreating computer games for physical environments, so that you live a computer game in a real life environment. You could argue that that's utilizing all of the things that we think of as easy in XR like technologies, mm-hmm. but doing them in a physical space which you're not used to thinking of them like that. So really the question is then, what does the technology add that isn't already here for us?
On the stage, main stage, everywhere, we hear a lot of conversations about the sticky problems around ethics, accessibility, safety and security. There's so many troubles. As storytellers and builders of the metaverse, what sort of responsibility do we have to address those questions? And two, are there ways that you're specifically addressing them in the works and experiences that you're building?
Such a big question, and it's such a huge part of our
we talk about
work separately and together. On a very simple, well, no, it's not simple. I'm really into manners. So I'm into please and thank you and sorry. And I just think that, kind of this, everything is part of the same world. And, kind of what would my granny teach me about AR technology and use a different knife for the butter, or, it's sort of very much about thinking about the impact you have on the world around you and the people around you. And I think that we should have it so that Siri won't do anything unless you say please. And if you don't say please, then they silence for an hour. And then if you don't give them an apology, then they silence for 24 hours. If people aren't using manners in that situation, then are they using manners in the everyday? People treat each other really badly. But I do think that unless it's built into technology, it's encouraging it.
Yeah, and I think, we're living in a world now where consequences are ever more important, mm-hmm. right? The long-term trends in how group dynamics are working, mm-hmm. and how group psychology has changed, or rather become much more polarized because of the way that we communicate and the consequences of the everyday now. Jane and I saw some work, a couple of Swedish artists called Lund and they work in pitch black a lot of the time. And over 10 years ago, they were having this problem where occasionally they would have people in the dark who would be mean to the other people in the experience because they couldn't be seen. Mm-hmm. They had a woman who kept reaching out and pinching other people in the experience and making it so that, like, negatively affecting their experiences, mm-hmm. because she didn't think that there were going to be consequences about it. Mm-hmm. That says something about people. That doesn't say something about the technology. And so when you build the technology, when you build the platforms, when you build the experiences, when you build them for accessibility, when you build them for inclusivity, when you build them to be as fair and as positive as possible, you need to also think through the ways people are going to abuse the situation and think through it realistically and not just be kind of blinded by the optimism.
The last question that we ask is just to fill in the blanks. The future is...
The future is... I think the future is good manners, but maybe I'm the only person that hears my grandmother's voice when Siri's talking to me. Also, though, anyone watching this, I probably have been rude to you if I've met you, and I'm really sorry.
Well, thank you for that
I'm not
apology.
saying that I'm always well-mannered. I like the idea that we have a future of human rights and equality and access and diversity, and that's what I'd like to happen. And I think manners is a good starting point.
I think the future is inherently unstable in both positive and negative ways. The positive spin on that is that never before in history, in artistic media as well as I would say throughout society, has the individual been so empowered.
Yes.
The average person has so much more power now than they did 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago.
Information, agency, connection,
the acceleration,
access.
the acceleration that we're going through is insane, and it's a challenge for us as people, as humans, to keep up with that. But it's also an opportunity, and I think we do have an opportunity to make things that are much better than what came before.
Oh my gosh, Andrew, I can't think of a better spot to wrap it there. And I just want to say thank you again. That was so wonderful.